Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Good evening and welcome to another night of Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan and I'm going to be your host tonight as we watch the world's smallest species of penguin, our little penguins, coming out of the water, crossing the beach and making their way back to their burrows here on Phillip Island in Victoria, Australia. And tonight I'm joined by Tom. Tom, do you want to come on in and tell us what you'll be doing tonight?
Hi everyone, welcome to all the regulars and any newbies watching. 913 penguins last night, which is pretty good numbers for this time of year. I was actually counting the penguins. So I know a few people like to guess, but you can guess the groups coming up for the first couple of groups tonight. We'll be keeping an eye on that as well. And I'll be keeping an eye on the Facebook feed. So any interesting questions we'll pass on. No repeated questions, guys, please. Don't clog it up. And as I said, anything interesting, we can't get to everyone, but we'll see how we go. Have a good night.
Great, thank you, Tom. There you go, over 900 penguins last night, so some good numbers that Tom managed to count last night. And do send through all your questions and comments. Make them good ones. Tom runs a tight ship and he'll send through some of your best questions to me that we can answer live on air. But yeah, like Tom said, we can't get to all of them. So, if you're tuning in night after night, keep coming back and, we'll get to all those questions eventually. So do keep them coming. And we are, like I said, we're watching our beautiful little penguins tonight from here on Phillip Island. And Phillip Island is also known as Milau, and it is the traditional lands of the Bunurong. The Bunurong have been coming here for thousands of years, caring for this beautiful country, and I would just like to acknowledge the Bunurong and their elders past, present and emerging as the traditional custodians of this land that we are lucky enough to be watching our penguins on tonight, that I'm lucky enough to live on and work on. I would like to acknowledge any traditional custodians of the lands that you all might be watching from tonight as well. Do let us know where you're watching from here in Australia or anywhere else around the world. We love to know where you're all viewing the penguins from tonight. Now, you may have noticed that we started the stream a little bit later tonight because it is getting dark later, so the penguins are going to start coming in later and later. Last night, if you were watching, you had to listen to me waffle on for quite a while before penguins came in. So hopefully they're not going to be too far away tonight now that we have started that little smidge later. And if you have a really big screen at home or you have really good eyes, you may actually be able to see some penguins getting ready to come home tonight. So they've had a tough day out fishing all day, maybe even a few days or a few weeks they've been out in the ocean looking for food. So looking for small fish, things like anchovies, pilchards, jellyfish, squid, anything pretty much they can fit in their mouths that's nice and yummy to fill their bellies. And once they've found enough food, they might decide that they want to come up here onto land. And they'll start forming groups offshore a couple of hours before sunset. So they've been out there for a while now, forming their groups that we call a raft. And I can actually see a few rafts now. They look like a black line on the surface. So they're a bit far away, but I'm going to do my best to try and zoom in a little bit on the camera here. And you might have seen as I moved the camera up, we have a nice bright moon that's out already. And there we go. You can see a few clear rafts right there. Well, they're clear to me. I've had a lot of practice spotting penguin rafts, but if you can see, there's two black lines kind of on the left, and there's actually a third little one behind them. There's another one over to the far right of the screen there, and those are all groups of penguins. And the reason we can see them so clearly is because there's so many in these groups and they're sitting on the surface. They're not diving down looking for food. They're sitting there looking at the horizon, right where our camera is, waiting for it to be dark enough that they feel safe coming out and crossing the beach. So that's all those little penguin heads you can see out there in the distance. And while they're forming those groups, they'll be talking to each other. So they'll be making a noise that we call a huck. They sound kind of like ducks quacking. So they'll be going huck, 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 talking to each other, trying to decide whether it's safe to cross the beach. And I think they've decided that it's looking dark enough now because they're getting closer. And they do wait till it gets dark because coming out of the water and crossing the beach is the most scary part of a penguin's day. They're really well camouflaged and hard to see when they're in the water. They do forage independently out at sea, so they only come into these groups to come and cross the beach. So when they're out there, a little individual penguin, you're not going to see them floating on the surface of the water because their back is blue, so they blend in really well out there. Even if you were a predator under the water, looking up at them, their little white bellies blend in with the sky. That's called countercoloration, so they're quite hard to see out there. They are pretty lucky there's not too many predators under the water for a little penguin. Here on Phillip Island, in some other places, they might have long-nosed fur seals or leopard seals that might try and eat them. But here on Phillip Island, we only have Australian fur seals, and they don't eat our little penguins, so they are pretty safe when they're out at sea. But when they're crossing the beach, they are quite vulnerable to big birds of prey. So things like sea eagles, Pacific gulls, swamp harriers that might want to make a penguin into a snack. So that's why they have these big groups, these rafts that they're coming in on, and they're waiting for it to get dark. When it's a bit darker, those birds of prey can't see to hunt. So that's when they go to roost for the night and the penguins are safer to come out of the water. They're getting closer. I hope you can all follow these rafts as they're coming in. It's getting a bit darker. It makes it a bit harder to see them, but they're coming up to shore quite quickly now. So we might even see them as these waves come in, surfing the waves in. There they go over that big wave there. Yep, they're getting closer. And we are seeing, like Tom said, we had over 900 penguins last night, which may sound like a lot, but here at the Penguin Parade, we are only watching about 10% of our entire penguin colony. And we do have about 32,000 little penguins here on Phillip Island. So it is the largest colony of little penguins in the world. They are found along the southern coast of Australia and in New Zealand. And we're very lucky to have so many here on Phillip Island. And they are all looked after by Phillip Island Nature Parks, which is who we are. bringing a live stream to you tonight. We manage that entire penguin population as well as over 20% of Phillip Island. So we also manage the Koala Reserve, Churchill Island Heritage Farm, the Nobby's Antarctic Journey, and many of our beautiful beaches, wetlands and woodlands all around the island, which includes this entire southern coastline that we can see out here tonight. And there they are. I thought I lost the raft and they've just popped up out of the water there. So all of these areas we do look after for the management of our wildlife and our wild places, for their conservation and research, and so that we can educate people about them. So you might see a few little heads bobbing around on the viewing stands tonight. We do have Regional Victoria who's able to come visit us at the moment. But if you do want to come and see some penguins, when you are able to, we would love to see everyone back here as soon as possible. And that money you spend on a ticket, it does go right back into that conservation, education and research work. There's one of those little heads popping up, excuse me. And if you can't come see us just yet and you would like to support the work we do here at Phillip Island Nature Parks, you can help out by donating to the Penguin Foundation. The link's right there in the description if you do want to adopt a penguin, adopt a bandicoot, a seal, a shearwater. You can hop onto the Penguin Foundation website. You can do that. And here they come, our first group of penguins. So I suspect we've just had a start, have we, Tom?
Yep.
Beautiful. It's an official start to our penguin count. Tonight we do have Ebony counting the penguins, so you can see if you can guess how many penguins cross the beach in this group here. We do call them a raft in the water. When they come up onto land, they are a group, but our favourite unofficial term for them is a waddle of penguins. So here comes a little waddle of penguins. How many? I'm not sure. Have your guesses in the comments, and we'll see if Ebony has a chance. She might give us some numbers and let us know how many there were, but otherwise it's a fun little guessing game. I'm not
give us a number, so it's up to you.
She's given us the number?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, go for it. What's the number, Tom? How many was there?
85.
85. That's a really good first group to start off with. And that's probably why we could see those rafts as they were coming in, because they're nice big ones. Those little ones tend to sneak up on you a little bit. They're not quite as clear, but this is a nice big group to start us off, and they're going to go right through the puddle here. They're not wasting any time. We still do have quite a bit of water in the puddle for the penguins to wade through. It is fresh water, so you might notice some wildlife coming down and having a little bit of a drink. The penguins, they've got all the water they need from the ocean. They can drink salt water, and they drink that as they're catching their fish. So you won't see any penguins stopping to have a bit of a drink here, but we may see some wallabies or other animals that might come down if they're a little bit thirsty. But the penguins are pretty clever. They can take the excess salt out of that salt land up behind their nose there. So if you see a penguin and it's kind of going like this and shaking its head, it might actually be trying to get rid of the excess salt that's coming out just kind of around its beak there. Oh no, the goose is back. I haven't actually seen the goose hanging around here for a little while. But, oh, and there's some penguins on the highway. Let's switch over to the highway. Yes, as we all probably know, if you've watched live penguin TV before, maybe you've seen Goosegate. The penguins and the geese, you know, they're not friends. They don't really get along. They're not going to hurt each other. They might have a bit of a standoff. There might be a little bit of a peck. A goose might peck a penguin. A penguin might peck a goose. I have definitely seen that happen. I'll go back to the main camera there. And now the goose is just minding his own business, having a munch on some grass. And I know a while ago, I did ask people for name suggestions for the goose. And I think my favourite one was Bruce the Goose. So maybe we can call him Bruce. I think it's the same goose. They, especially this time of year when they have young ones, they do tend to be quite territorial. Doesn't look like this goose has had any young ones this season. I'm not even sure if I've seen this one's partner hanging around, so keep an eye out. Normally if you see one goose, there's usually a second one not too far away, because they do mate for life. So they do look a little bit scary and feisty when you see them scaring away the penguins, but they are beautiful animals. If you do come and visit us here on Phillip Island, you'll see plenty of geese roaming around, and one of their favourite places to be is to stand in the middle of the road when you're trying to get around the island. So you do have to definitely keep an eye out for the geese if you do come and visit us here on Millau. And I love this little view of the penguins waddling away from us, the little wiggly waggly penguin butts. And that's kind of what you'd see if you were to come and watch penguins in the morning, because they do head back out to sea again in the morning when it's still dark. So a couple of hours before sunrise, they'll make their way back out to sea again. And they'll go out in smaller groups, kind of with whoever lives nearby. They'll form those groups and make their way back out into the ocean for a little bit more fishing, filling up those little penguin bellies. Ooh, we have quite a few more coming in, a little group waiting at the edge of the water there. While we're waiting for them, maybe we'll grab a question. Do you have any questions ready for me, Tom? Looks like there's plenty.
This is from Francine on behalf of Theodore. Do the penguins go to any other islands apart from Phillip Island to rest?
Okay, thank you for that one, Theodore. So our little penguins, they don't usually land anywhere else than where they nest here on Phillip Island. So when they're spending a month out at sea, or in their first year of life, they can be out there for their whole first year. They won't usually come up onto land anywhere else unless something is wrong. So occasionally a penguin might get really tired if he's struggling to find enough food, and they might wash up somewhere where they're not meant to be. Maybe they might be able to have a bit of a rest and go back out, but that's really when sometimes penguins might have to come into our care here at our wildlife clinic here on Phillip Island. I know a little while ago you might remember that we had a bit of a storm and we had quite a few penguins washing up on the beach, which is a perfectly natural thing when there were a lot of chicks that fledged that season, and some of them were having a bit of trouble finding food. So if they are struggling a little bit out at sea, sometimes they might come and wash up onto land for a break, where sometimes we might be able to give them a little bit of help. But usually a happy, healthy penguin doing its thing out at sea will only come back up onto land to where it wants to nest or to molt at those different times of the year. And most penguins, the majority, do come back to the same place where they were born to make their burrows when they are ready to breed. So when they're usually about 2 to 3 years old, they'll come back to where they were born. But there is a small proportion of penguins that will go somewhere else to make their home. And that's how we end up with new penguin colonies. So if all the penguins only ever came back to the exact same spot, we'd probably just have one really, really big penguin colony. But they do sometimes go elsewhere, and they might decide, oh, this is a pretty nice little place, I'm going to make my nest right here. And that's how we actually ended up with a penguin colony in St Kilda, near the city in Melbourne. If you live in Victoria or Melbourne, you might have been to see the St Kilda little penguins. There is a small colony there, and we think that those penguins actually originated from some penguins from here on Phillip Island, because they do go around and forage in Port Phillip Bay, and they might have washed up onto what is a man-made breakwater, which was actually made for the Olympics in Melbourne. And some penguins washed up there, and they thought, oh, this is a pretty good place. It's close to food. It's protected, luckily, and they just made their burrows in between the rocks there. And now, last I heard, I think there's about 1,500 penguins living over there in the city. So nothing compared to our 32,000 penguins. And that's actually one of the few penguin colonies that's actually attached to the mainland, because our little penguins do face a lot of different threats, and one of those main ones is introduced predators, so things like foxes. So luckily there's a big gate on the St Kilda breakwater, and also there's always people out there. I've been out there in the middle of the night and there's always fishermen out there, so I'd say a fox isn't quite game enough to get out there, and those penguins are quite safe. on the breakwater. Just like our penguins here on Phillip Island are pretty safe because we have actually managed to get rid of all the foxes here on Phillip Island. So we have been officially fox free since 2017, which took a lot of time, a lot of work and effort to help protect not just our little penguins, but all of our other wildlife here on the island. It's particularly important for ground nesting birds like penguins and our short-tailed shearwater birds that come and nest here each year. And our small mammals as well. So a lot of these animals struggling on the mainland. You know, if a penguin does wash up kind of in the wrong place and he's stuck there overnight, he or she might be vulnerable to some of those land-based predators. And I know a while ago we also spotted a cat down here on our Penguin Highway, which was a bit of a shock to all of us. We do have feral cats here on Phillip Island, and it is something that now that we're fox free we are working to address to help protect our wildlife, because of course they are predators, and when they don't when they're not domesticated, when they're not at home being fed and they're running wild and feral out in the wild, they do eat our native wildlife. So it was a big concern that we saw that cat on the live stream, and I can report the cat has been caught. So our penguins are safe from that cat that we saw. Our bandicoots can run safely around, and our team does continue to do cat trapping and monitoring. There's camera traps all over the place to try and see where those cats are so that they can be removed from our wild areas to protect our wildlife. So very happy to let you guys know that that cat is no longer here on the Summerland Peninsula in our penguin colony. And here comes another little group of penguins. We're getting a lot of smallish groups tonight. Haven't seen many big... Oh, here we go. As I say that, there's another group coming up on the left-hand side as well. They're just trying to trick me by all coming up at the same time. And again, while we're waiting for this, guys, maybe we'll grab another question, Tom.
Yeah, this is from Brooke on behalf of Evan, who's 5, and Ada, who's 3. How many years can a little penguin lay eggs for?
Oh, okay. Thank you for that one. Well, I'll start answering that question by telling you how long our oldest penguin has lived for. So our oldest penguin that we've seen here on Phillip Island lived to be almost 26 years old. And that penguin was reported to be breeding right up until the last time she was seen. So it doesn't really seem like there's an expiration date on when the penguins stop breeding. They don't go through menopause or anything like that, like us humans. And 26 is quite old for a penguin. So they'll keep laying eggs for a very long time. And the average age for our penguins is actually only around 7 years old. And that's because, it is quite difficult in those first few years of life for those young penguins to have to figure out how to be a penguin, how to find food, how to get really good at it. But once they make it past those first few years, they can quite often make it into their teens. But to be a 20-plus-year-old penguin is very, very impressive. And then that means they probably have raised a lot of young and been a very successful breeder. Oh, and here comes another big group on the penguin colony. Is that the 5 minutes left,
Yeah.
Tom? It goes so quick, doesn't it?
It does.
I know, definitely when I'm yapping away, it feels like it goes quick.
I'm
All
actually
right.
giving you an extra minute or two.
You can... an extra... Okay.
No, I have gone that. We'll have a cafe go after that. It's up to you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Okay, maybe we'll try and get in a couple more questions, though, because it looked like you had a bit of a list. What else have you got for
We'll
me?
just do one more.
Okay, one more question.
This is Fran and Dom in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Are chicks ever abandoned, orphaned, and do you intervene to ensure their survival?
Okay. So, yes, it does certainly happen, and that actually, that flows on quite well from what I was saying about how long a successful penguin can live. If they're really good at finding food and providing, they can live for a long time, and that's because the adult penguins, they do prioritize their own survival over breeding. So if a penguin lays some eggs and they hatch and they're raising those little chicks, and then something happens and there's not enough food, the food moves further away, and they know that they're not going to be able to find enough food to raise those chicks, or that it's going to be really hard and it's going to affect their own survival, then those chicks do sometimes become abandoned. And it is really sad, but when the chicks fledge, so if they make it to that 8 to 10 week old mark, which takes a lot of effort for the parents, it takes about, I think it's about 14 kilos of fish for each chick that they raise to fledging. So it's a lot of effort goes into it. And then once those chicks fledge, there is only about a 20% survival rate. So it is a huge investment in those chicks that they raise to send out, and then it's survival of the fittest. So there's quite a big chance that those chicks they raise may not survive. So an adult penguin, it will do its best to raise its chicks, but if it feels like it's not good, it's going to affect its own survival. They can be abandoned, and no other penguin will adopt someone else's chicks, and we don't intervene because it is completely natural. There are yearly fluctuations in food availability that affect the penguin's breeding success. So if we were to take every abandoned chick to our wildlife clinic and we were to feed it and raise it and then release it, then there's not going to be enough food out there for those chicks that we're feeding and raising, because the parents already figured out that there wasn't enough food for them to raise them. So they are wild animals, and we try to keep them as wild as possible, and that means that during that breeding process, a completely natural cycle of ups and downs, we have good years, we have bad years, we don't intervene with that. We'll only intervene if a penguin is sick or injured, if it's an adult penguin, or if it's something that is caused by humans. So certainly if a chick becomes sick or injured because of something that we've done, we'll certainly take that chick into care for rehabilitation and release back into the wild. But we do mainly focus our rehabilitation efforts on the adults that might come in for various reasons. We've had, I'm trying to zoom in on these guys in the bushes and they're hiding on me. So we have a bit of a penguin deficit right now. So yeah, you might have been watching one live stream when we did have a penguin come in with some debris stuck around his neck. We've had penguins come in with fishing line wrapped around their legs. Sometimes they might have something wrapped so tight around their foot that it might have to be amputated, or their foot might even come off altogether. So you might know of Stumpy, who sometimes walks past the penguin highway, who is actually missing a foot, but he can still get around and go about his business. So we do have to definitely keep an eye out for those things. So if there's a penguin who's walking a bit funny, we'll look at that penguin and think, oh, is he fat and healthy? Can it get to where it needs to go? And that's the important thing, especially in the breeding season. If a penguin has a funny walk, we don't need to take them into care. They don't need our help. They are very resilient, very tough little animals, these penguins. What are these guys doing? Where are you going? I thought they were already back at their burrow, but maybe they took a wrong turn. Let's zoom out a little bit.
Shellgritters.
Shellgritters?
I've had a few like this week.
Ah, you think these ones are, or there
No,
was some on the
it could
highway? It could be. Yeah, maybe. Let's keep an eye on them. It was funny the way they just kind of ran down. Oh no, now they're going up the highway.
Wrong turn.
Yep. Oh, they saw these other penguins and maybe they were like, oh, no, I want to go that way. I want to go with them. They do use their eyesight and their memory to find where they're going, and they're usually pretty good at finding their way, but sometimes they do get a bit carried away, I like to think, walking along with a group and they miss their turn. You know, when you're driving along the freeway, maybe you're singing along to a really good song or chatting to someone and you miss your turn off. I like to think that's kind of what happens sometimes with the penguins, and they'll get up the path a bit and they'll stop and they'll look around. They're like, hang on, something's not right. This doesn't look right. This isn't where I'm meant to be. And they'll look a bit confused for a bit, and then they'll see some other penguins going a different way and they'll figure out, that's where I want to be. That was my turn off. And they'll head back down and follow them along the path. So I think those two were maybe a little lost for a minute, but they figured it out. Or maybe they might have even been going to visit someone. Maybe a potential partner, or maybe someone who's not their partner. Maybe they're cheating on their partner, because we are heading into the start of our penguin breeding season. There's been a lot of special penguin cuddles, as I like to call it. There's been quite a bit of that going on. And our little penguins, they're not like the geese. They don't, I'll go back to the highway, sorry. They don't mate for life. And although they are socially monogamous within a season, they do stay together with the same partner in that burrow for a breeding season. They are a little promiscuous. They do sneak around and cheat on their partners. So if you see a guilty looking penguin maybe coming from another burrow and then making its way back down to somewhere else, it may have been up to a little bit of mischief. So, and the males and the females do that. And then at the end of each breeding season, there's usually somewhere between an 18 to 50% divorce rate for our little penguins. So they, again, they want to increase their own chances of survival, but also increase the chance of their chicks surviving. So if they have a bad breeding season, they kind of blame their partner a little bit. They're like, oh, maybe you weren't so good at finding food for our young. I'm going to go find a better partner for the next breeding season. And that's something we've seen in studying our little penguins year to year. When we have a good season, there's a lot less divorces than when there's a poor season, and then they're more likely to change partners for the next season. But sometimes they do stay together for quite a while as well. And I think I've probably used up all my 5 minutes, have I, Tom?
Only 10.
Oh, has it been? Oh, goodness me, I'm done a Jordan. Oh no, that would probably be another 10 or so. Alrighty, I'll finish on, there's a couple penguins down here and still maybe a couple coming out of the water. Make your guesses how many penguins you think we'll have across the beach tonight. We do have a little bit longer of our penguin count left. Do tune in again tomorrow night, where we'll let you know how many penguins cross. If we didn't get to your question, keep coming back and watching. Keep asking that question each night, and we'll hopefully give you an answer. We will do our best to try and talk about something a little bit different each and every night. I know that I'm still learning new things, so I hope that all of you regular watchers are still learning something new in each and every night you tune in. We do hope to see everyone being able to come back and view our little penguins in person as soon as possible. But again, in the meantime, if you would like, you can symbolically adopt a penguin or donate to the Penguin Foundation, and it does help us a lot in the work that we do here at Phillip Island Nature Parks. I hope you've all had a fantastic night watching our wonderful little penguins making their way back to their burrows here on Phillip Island. We'll hope to see you back here again soon. Do you want to come in and say goodbye, Tom?
Okay, see everyone. Hopefully we'll see a few visitors here. We had some visitors come through the front doors tonight when me and Megan were there, and recognised me and Megan, so they said hello, which was great to see. So hopefully we'll see a few more of you. Have a good night.
Yes, it's fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon, guys. Bye.